just kind of dive right in. Tell me a little bit about where you are, who you are, where have you been in terms of UX writing, how you got to where you are, and maybe where you're planning on hoping to go.
Yeah, all great questions. Right now, I'm a UX content strategist at CallRail in Atlanta. It's a marketing analytics platform. I've been there since August 2018, so a little while now, and I've learned so much. I transitioned to this role from journalism, and like many people in this field, I have a winding background. Yeah, I thought I was going to do journalism forever, but the industry is pretty tough. I had 2 layoffs in 3 years, and after that second layoff, I was like, I need something a little more consistent, safe, 9 to 5. So, I was searching for jobs and I wanted to stay in Atlanta. So I was applying for a lot of different writing related roles. And I was fortunate to land in my current position. And I've just grown within it since. I've been really fortunate to be around a lot of enriching coworkers and supportive people. And I think the best thing about the past few years in my role is that my company and my manager have allowed me to grow in the ways that are best for me. There wasn't ever any particular pressure to be like, since you were a journalist before, you have to be like a UX researcher, or you have to, do these things that might be more like, asking people questions all the time. I've been involved in UX research, just listening in on things, but that's not something I do day to day. So it's been fun to grow in the ways that I've really enjoyed. So right now, yeah, I'm on our growth team at my company where we design tests for A/B and multivariant tests to try to get people to convert more often during our free trial process. I also help out with other areas of our app as well, work closely with product managers, UX designers, business intelligence professionals as well. And then I'm also in charge of our product video project where I build out videos with a teammate of mine who's awesome, does voiceovers, original music. I handle the visual aspects and kind of the content strategy of that. Like, you'll look at all our stats, view stats each month and each quarter, present those to product development leadership. But it's been a lot of fun to grow that out as well. So a lot of different hats these past few years, but I've grown a lot and just eager to see where this all takes me in the future.
Awesome. Do you have any idea? Like, do you have any kind of in 5 years? I hate that question, but like in 5 years, where do you see yourself, Andrew?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I wish I knew actually. 5 years ago, I want to guess I am where I am right now. But yeah, I think I'd love to just grow as a mentor, as a potential manager. I've never managed anyone before. So I think that would be a lot of fun. This past year, actually, it's been really rewarding for me to meet people throughout the world through LinkedIn or other online resources and have chats with them about breaking into UX writing or advising them on their portfolios or just offering advice related to my path, and hopefully it can help them as they decide what their journey is going to be. So anyway, I think that'd be a lot of fun to do as a kind of formal role within an organization, just kind of a mentor people. I'm doing that as well, actually, right now at the UX Writing Hub. I'm mentoring 2 students. So I've just found that whole experience really enriching and rewarding because in my former career, I had a lot of people who helped me grow and give me hope when I didn't really have reason to have hope. It's kind of funny looking back at the time. I was just kind of like interested in the field, but I didn't have a lot of clips or experience. But these people who are established in the field really built me up and just encouraged me to keep going and experiment with things and push the boundaries. So I've always wanted to give that back in some way. And even though I'm not in journalism anymore, I've kind of developed this interest in UX writing then where hopefully I can do the same thing for people along the way and then they can pay it forward to other people in the future. Because I think the world's just a better place and we're all helping each other.
Oh yeah, I agree totally. I know you certainly helped me in the last few months for sure. So I do appreciate your mentorship.
My pleasure. Yeah, I'm glad we met.
Yeah. So speaking of what you were talking about in terms of LinkedIn, that's kind of why I asked you to be on this week. So can you tell me, talk a little bit about what you do on Wednesdays, with your posts on Wednesdays, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, definitely. It just happened organically, but I call it I wish I knew it. And it's just something that I kind of just think on the spot. I don't plan anything out really. I'm like, what can I write about this week? But it's just stuff I wish I knew when I broke into this field in August 2018 and just different pieces of, I don't know, wisdom I've gained along the way. And I just want to share that with people. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Just a short little post. LinkedIn is great because it keeps me to a certain limit of words. And so it just forces me to be tight with my writing, which is good. So I like that format. It works well for me. Otherwise, I think I'd be pretty long-winded, or it would get boring after a while if I wrote something really long. So anyway, it's a great format for me. And yeah, each Wednesday, I just try to write something that I think would be beneficial for people who are trying to break into UX writing in particular. That's the audience I have in mind when I sit down and write this, because I think a lot of people I've learned are just so fascinated in how you get into this field. I feel like it's become so much more popular in the past, especially year and a half. And so I think there's just this need for people like me who have been in it for a few years to provide some insight on how you adjust to this field if you're trying to get into it, or if you just started, and then like break in if you're trying to get into it. So yeah, I think there's just so much opportunity for people like myself. I'm not super experienced by any means with like 10 years or anything, but like in the few years I've had in this field, to give back some of that knowledge, because there's just so much along the way I think we can share. When I first started this, I was like, man, I'm kind of putting pressure on myself to come up with something every week, but I've done this since January now. It's like, oh, there's always something. It isn't too hard to come up with a topic and write about it pretty quickly. So yeah, I'm going to continue it each Wednesday. I'm glad you enjoy it. It's been a lot of fun. I hope more people check it out and join in the conversation or the comments or something like that, because I think it's a lot of fun to just share those insights and then have people interact with them as well, if you have any thoughts related to that. So thanks so much for reading it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you said you've been at it since January, and I know I've commented a couple of times on a couple of them, which is super fun. I love engaging with your posts; they're super fun. Do you ever get any kind of private like DMs on LinkedIn about like people, reaching out as a result of what you've shared?
Yeah, I don't know about that particular post series by any means, but I definitely, like yesterday, I had two chats with people who just hit me up with private messages on LinkedIn. And so I usually have at least one, maybe two, three a week with people who contact me, which is great. They've either read something I post on LinkedIn or other Medium essays I've had published throughout time. And they say, hey, I read your essay. I'd love to chat with you about how you broke into the field or something. So it's really fun at this point to have stuff out there where people see it and then look me up and then say they want to have a conversation. So I think that's the most rewarding part of it, because when I create content, I kind of view it as a door opening to the outside world anyway, where it allows people to come in and interact with you. So anyway, like content to me, as far as like essays and posts and things like that, are a beginning of a conversation, and I want people to interact with me along the way. So anyway, yeah, it's been fun. I love chatting with people. If you're listening to this, I'm always open for like a 30-minute video chat or something. Message me anytime. And I love helping and sharing my experiences and offering advice. So yeah, it's been fun. That series in particular, I think some people have read it, then other posts too, where they message me afterward and they're like, hey, let's chat for a little bit. And that always brings a smile to my face. I always enjoy it. So yeah, definitely, I'm always open to that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, so since you've been at it since January, I feel like you have a collection, right, of the kind of the top. What did I say in my email to you? 5 to 7 things you wish you would have known when you started out, and I think you you know give yourself a little more credit, because people who have been at UX writing for 10 years, they're so far away from being a beginner, right? So you're pretty close to that. And so you have this great advantage to have a few years of experience, and you still remember what it's like to be where I am, right? And that's so valuable for someone like myself and other people listening who want to break in. So give yourself more credit.
That definitely sounds good. I'm just glad it's beneficial, because yeah, that's the biggest goal out of all this, is to share the knowledge and inspire people. So thank you for that. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. So go ahead. If you, I gave you a couple of days to think about it. So what are your top 5 to 7, however many you want to share, things you wish you would have known as
Oh,
you were
wow.
reading?
Yeah, put me on the spot. That's some pressure right there. Kind of a power rankings of topics. I love it. So let's see. I actually kind of like the one I wrote like yesterday when we're filming this anyway. Discovering the UX writing community, and I think that is so valuable. Just trying to find voices within this field when you're trying to break in, because I learned a lot that way when I first joined this field. I was trying to find people who were established in it and shared advice. So anyway, I wrote about how I search particular hashtags on LinkedIn, and then if I see certain people use those hashtags often in their posts, I connect with them and then maybe send them a message or something, begin a conversation. So I think that's beneficial for people to understand. That's good to know. I think I've also enjoyed sharing about the amount of writing and UX writing. I learned that pretty quickly when I started this job that there really isn't a lot of, literary writing of sorts. I was used to that in my journalism career where I would write long form stories and write these long pieces where they'd be a couple thousand words or more. And so UX writing is different and it's much more concise. You want to be clear and useful and have every word count. And so it's very intentional with the words. And so I learned that quickly that there isn't a lot of writing necessarily in UX writing, but there's a lot of planning that goes into each word and conceptual thought and research and things like that, which is also exciting. So anyway, that was one of my favorites, I'd say. I also think compromise was the thing I wrote about that was pretty interesting. I learned you have to compromise in this work quite a bit, which is good. I mean, you work in cross-functional teams with different stakeholders, like UX designers, product managers, maybe even people in marketing who have particular goals for whatever project you're working on. And so you might come in with a Figma file or some kind of draft of some sorts with your words, and then they say, hey, this doesn't match our value prop 100%. Let's switch it to this or something. So I've learned along the way that it's good to compromise and not, create a fire over one or two words that you're really passionate about. Of course, you want to stand up for yourself as a UX writer if you know you're right, and that it would be bad if you changed anything. But a lot of times, like, you can compromise about things for the greater good. You never want to create hard feelings with your coworkers over anything you write. So I think that was another good one as well. And then developing niches was a topic I wrote about not too long ago. I think that's really important no matter what job you have in the working world. You definitely want to develop a niche outside your job description and just make yourself valuable in ways that maybe you or your manager didn't expect at the time you were hired. And I think my video work is an example of that. And I talk to people about this whenever they want to listen about it. I think that doing that video work has opened eyes within my company about like what's possible within our UX content team. Now it's almost an expected part of the UX output within our little group. And so like now we have placement for videos within our Figma files and designs and workflows. So we're considering video early on in the design process, which is something that just didn't happen obviously like 3 years ago. And it took time to gain that respect. You have to make things and make good things and have people understand that what you're doing has value. So yeah, that was definitely respect earned over time, but it's super rewarding now to get to that point where video is respected by higher ups within my company outside of product even. And so yeah, I think that has been rewarding to think about, just developing a niche outside your job description. You want to get good at what you were hired to do, of course, but developing another skill or skill set that can benefit your team and the business as a whole, I think is definitely something good to keep in mind. And then just the last thing, I think I wrote about personal development at small companies. I've learned that with my company. It's fairly small, just a little over 200 employees, I think. And I'm so glad I entered the field at this particular situation because I think I've been able to grow and experiment and invent things because we're a pretty nimble group. Experimentation is encouraged, and you can grow in whatever ways that are best for your strengths and best for the business. So I think for my particular case, probably a lot of people out there, like entering the field at a small company is definitely like one of the best things you can do as a UX writer because you can make mistakes and it won't be super bad. You can always roll things back, of course, but you can push boundaries too a little bit easier, I feel like. So I'm glad I started at the company I did and always have a soft spot for it no matter where I go, because I definitely gained some lessons and just kind of that fighting spirit, I feel like, to kind of invent and be an entrepreneur of sorts within my role. And so, yeah, I think that's very important and beneficial for anyone who's thinking about what kind of company do I want to join for the first time. Of course, there are certain companies out there that we always hear about and the big behemoths within our industry, but don't overlook the small companies too, because there are some good people and good mentors and managers out there who can definitely set you on the right track early in your career, and you'll definitely learn a lot of things along the way.
For sure. So I have a couple of questions about your little list that you just created, which I love and appreciate. Thank you. So what you were just saying about small companies. So I know I've talked to a lot of people from a lot of the bigger companies, that are, in the industry, when you went in as a new person in the industry into UX writing, was there a process established? Was there a process that was already established in terms of what UX writing looks like in the design flow, or was it something that you were able to create? And did that make you nervous as someone who didn't have kind of the formal UX writing experience going into it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was established quite a bit when I entered, which was great. I think it would have been hard for me as someone completely new in the field to enter and not know like what this looks like, the workflow as far as like working on a UX project with a designer or something. So we use different tools back then. We're completely within Figma now, but back then we were using InVision. And as a UX writer, I had to leave comments within the designs, and then the designer would have to change the copy actually based on my comments. So, but now within Figma, I can automatically go in and just do it myself, which is great. So I think our workflow has improved because of the tool change. So just shout out to anyone related to Figma out there, because yeah, it's a great tool. I use it often. But anyway, so yeah, I think my boss did a great job of building the foundation for our role. And I think that we were set on a path for success because of that. And she works closely with our UX director too, and she's a big advocate of our team as well. So I think just having that buy-in from people throughout the UX team as a whole, like other UX designers, is so important. And we definitely have had that in my company, which I think is great. And I think is so important as a UX writing team to just have that buy-in and have a seat at the table. So anyway, like, yeah, I think it's matured over time, definitely, as we've grown and scaled out our company. And, we do things a little differently now than we did in 2018 when I joined, but we weren't completely just, breaking ground, I guess, at that point when I joined, which is good. And we had a style guide and everything at that time too, as a UX content team. So that's important, but everything evolves, and that's great too. So you definitely learn from things. Everything's fluid and you can make changes along the way. And so we've definitely matured, but yeah, it's fun to think back to those early days, I guess, and know that we've grown from that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that's sometimes a hesitation for people who prefer a smaller company, but they're like, oh, I'm going to be the only UX writer.
Yeah.
What does that look like? I don't even know where to start. What's a style guy?
Yeah,
So
definitely. Oh,
that's
for sure.
like, I think that's reassuring to hear from you that there are smaller companies out there who have a process in place and have a place. UX writing has a place at the table, and I think that might be like for those of us starting out, that's a good question. If you prefer a smaller company like myself, I think it's a good question to ask in an interview. Like, what does your process already look like? Like, what is your style? Do you have a style guide? What? So understand the context in which you're entering. Especially if you're new to the industry and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to be the one to do all of these things, which is fine.
Mhm.
Like anyone could probably handle it, but as someone who's new, like you want a little scaffolding, right? Like you want a bit of a foundation to start from. So I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, you can it always changes and evolves and grows. There has to be room for that. But like as someone in their first position, like it could be a scary, daunting thing to be like, it's only you.
I know exactly. And I will say, I think it would have been really hard for me to be the only one, like the first UX writer going into a company, especially as someone who didn't have that background when I joined my company. So I think for my particular situation, maybe others out there, if you're listening, you're in this situation, just trying to break into the field for the first time without UX experience, I would look for a situation where you have a good mentor who has a UX writing background in particular. That's not always the case. I've learned actually, like UX writers will sometimes have managers who are UX designers or have that kind of background as UX designers. So anyway, like I would definitely look for a manager who has a UX writing background, at least for your first manager, because I think it is so important to have that perspective as you learn and grow within the field, and just have someone who you can ask a lot of questions to and just bounce ideas off of. So having that particular perspective, I think early in your career is important.
For sure, for sure. So this next question isn't necessarily super UX writing specific, but I think it relates to collaboration, which is super important in this world. Um, so in terms of your own personal professional development, maybe within your company, do you ever do anything with like emotional intelligence and like understanding how people show up as human beings? and kind of their energy that contributes to how you work with them. Because I think that's a fascinating topic. And I think we could probably talk forever about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
I think, because this role is so collaborative, across, there's so many stakeholders you have to get along with and talk to and present information with and all of that. Does your team as a whole or your organization or you personally, do you ever think about emotional intelligence and energy and how people kind of show up in these situations?
That's a great question too. I think I've gotten better personally since joining my company on this topic in particular. And I think my company in the past year, because of the outside world having so much going on, is definitely taking steps to make that more of a priority. Like bringing your whole self to work is something I've heard before. We've had sessions related to, and it's called doing the work trainings, but like trying to understand where your coworkers are coming from in their lives and what they're dealing with at that particular time, and having the courage to share pretty deep thoughts, which I never thought about. I was always a person before this job who had a wall really between my personal and professional life. And I think I've done a little bit better job of knocking down that wall, particularly in the past year, especially with remote work. I feel like it's more necessary than ever to be honest with yourself and your coworkers about what you're thinking and feeling, because it does affect how you're doing your job. I don't think it's possible anymore to have a complete wall between your personal and professional life with the way the world is right now. So yeah, I think that is something I've definitely gotten better at in the past year. I think as a whole, like my team, since I joined even, has just been great about having a tight knit, cohesive, experience together. And that's something I value most about my team. And I think UX writers as a whole are great about this. Like we're just so like kind of tight knit, and the cohesion that we share is so valuable. And so that's something that's been exhibited throughout my time within my company. And I think it's just grown as we've been involved with the company longer. So yeah, I think that's an interesting topic for sure. And I think throughout the past year, more formal steps have been taken within my company to make it like a group setting where we talk about some of these deeper issues. And that has been helpful for me and has made me consider new things within my working life, that, hey, like maybe I should share more personal thoughts about, hey, I'm feeling pretty bad about this thing that's not involved with work, but let me talk to you about it. Or, I've had people at work tell me, if you need time to take it off, like log off early. I remember, especially right after the election, it was a really stressful time. And so like, we're encouraged to take time off if we needed to. So anyway, yeah, I think good companies out there recognize that this is a topic that is very important for employees at the moment. And so you want to kind of have a true self experience, I think, in our generation anyway, where you just bring your whole self to work and you aren't someone else at work compared to what you are in your personal life. So I've definitely learned that that's an important thing to present to your coworkers and managers and things like that as you mature within this job.
For sure. Do you have any? So it sounds like you have a pretty sweet setup at your company with your team. You all sounds like you get along. You work well together. You probably, if when you get back to an office, you probably like hang out and want to spend time outside of work.
Yeah, I know. What's an office? I forget what that is at
Right.
this point, right?
Like
Yeah.
you have to wear like real pants someday. I don't know.
Can't have sweatpants on anymore. I have to buy new clothes probably. They don't fit in the old ones anymore.
Right. Do you have any advice for people who might not encounter that kind of camaraderie right off the bat, or how did you build that up, because sometimes being the new kid in town can be a little intimidating,
Mhm.
especially if it's already established team or if there isn't really a team. Do you have any advice for people who want to ultimately have that kind of team camaraderie but don't know either how to create it, or it just doesn't exist at the company they're in?
Oh, yeah. I think it's really important to build that camaraderie or experience it however you can. And so, whether you're new on a team, I think it's just about being true to yourself, just being yourself around other people, being considerate, being a good coworker, just be a good person. That's basic advice. And I think the camaraderie comes from that. And that's what I learned in my role. I didn't come in I didn't know anything at the time, but I didn't come in as a know-it-all. And, you just want to be a humble, curious person. And I think the camaraderie builds from there. If you're a new person coming into a team that's already established anyway. I think if you're the only UX writer at a company, that's obviously a different situation, presents different challenges. But I think in that case, I definitely try to seek out people, whether it's within the city you work in or online or internationally or something, and try to gather advice and become kind of a working group that way, where you have regular chats with people, or you check in about processes at other companies and just build camaraderie that way. I think it'd be a little bit harder. I've never had that experience, but I do think the in-person stuff or the video call stuff now, what we have with our coworkers, I think that's a little bit easier. But if you're the only person at a company, it does present opportunity too, where it can be like, okay, this is the situation I want to get to, let me create it. And you can go about creating your own processes that way, which sounds pretty exciting, but it's probably a lot of work too. So anyway, I think it's just all about finding opportunities as a person, if you're the only UX writer on a team, to build that up. But if you're someone coming into a team, it's just about being your normal self, a humble, curious person, and just seeing the camaraderie and trust grow from there.
That's great advice. I love it. So we're coming up to time. So, we've had a really great conversation. Is there anything last minute that comes to your mind that you really you need to tell,
It's burning to get out.
Hiring UX writers right now? It's burning in your soul.
Yeah, I think I come up with something here. I just would say, if you're considering making the leap, do it. It's such a rewarding, exciting field. I didn't know anything about it when I joined, and I consider myself very fortunate to have fallen into the situation I did. I sometimes think about what it would be like if I would have had the same experience, or just all things, if they were the same as they were in 2018, if I would have been able to join my company and have my job now in 2021. And that's sometimes scary to think about. I don't know if I would have been able to get my job. So I think it's definitely a thing where if you can break into this field, do it, and just enjoy the camaraderie that this field presents right now at the moment. Not only with your coworkers, but internationally. I've met people throughout the world because of this field, and I've become a better person for it. So definitely, I'm always available. Message me if you need any help. Other people out there are super helpful. Look them up as well. I think we're all so eager, as people have a few years into this, a few years of experience in this field now, to help and try to break down the doors for people who are trying to get in as well, because I feel like the popularity of this job has grown a lot, even in the short time since I've joined the field. So definitely, if you're interested in getting in, definitely try. Look for people who can help you get in, and we'll do all we can to help, because we've definitely become better for joining this field. So yeah, look me up if you need help. I'd be happy to help.
You want to share, how to get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. My email address is aastleford@gmail.com, just AASTLEFORD@gmail.com. And then, yeah, look me up on LinkedIn. Happy to respond to any messages there, and love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, and as always, super helpful and insightful. So I appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Kathleen, for the invite. And yeah, happy to be your first guest. Super exciting.
Awesome. I love it.